The title of this video: She disobeyed orders. The galaxy now calls her the beginning. In a galaxy ruled by fear and order, Commander Rose Virellian disobeys a direct command and awakens an ancient entity known as the Seed, an echo of a forgotten civilization. Branded a traitor and erased from history, Rose goes into exile, only to discover she's been chosen as the catalyst for a new cycle of awakening. As her presence sparks rebellion and forgotten truths resurface, the Central Command deploys a weapon to erase her from existence. But Rose transcends erasure by becoming more than a leader; she becomes memory itself. The galaxy doesn't remember her as a rebel. It calls her the beginning. Ask ChatGPT. The stars shimmered cold and distant as Rose Virellian stood alone on the command deck of the Valkyrie Ascendant, the flagship of the 10th Fleet. From here, the galaxy looked serene, like a dream sealed in crystal. But Rose had learned long ago that stillness in space often meant something was waiting to erupt. She adjusted the collar of her high-collared command coat, obsidian black with silver trim, a garment earned through relentless discipline and victories that had cost her pieces of her soul. At 27, she was the youngest fleet commander in the history of Central Command, her name spoken with awe and suspicion. She didn't fit the mold. Too intuitive. Too questioning. Too human. Behind her, the ship pulsed with quiet energy, monitors flickering, officers murmuring data to each other, the low thrum of a vessel older than most of its crew. They were stationed near the border of the outer silence, a region marked dead space on every official star chart. No patrols. No stations. Just one directive: do not enter. "Commander," said Lieutenant Sora Lin, her voice tight with unease. "Anomaly detected. Edge of scan range. It's persistent." Rose didn't turn. "Parameters?" "It's radiating in rhythmic pulses, triangular waveforms. Organic and artificial." Sora hesitated. "It's moving." That stirred something in Rose, deep beneath the layers of training and order. Triangular waveforms were a ghost signal, first detected over a century ago, then buried by command. It was the kind of mystery that got people reassigned to mining colonies, or made them vanish. Rose had read the unredacted files anyway. She had always wanted to know what they weren't supposed to find. "Patch it through," she said. A soft chime filled the bridge, followed by a sound that was less like a signal and more like breathing. The room held its breath. Commander Virellian stepped closer to the central display. In her chest, her heart tapped a warning: turn back. But in her mind, something else whispered: this is it. "I want to intercept," she said, voice steady. Captain Ress, her second in command, straightened. His tone was pure regulation. "Commander, orders were clear. No deviation into outer silence. Observation only. That signal is in forbidden space." "I'm aware." He stepped forward, voice lower. "Don't throw this away, Rose. We report it, we wait. That's the protocol." Rose's violet eyes locked with his. "And how many protocols were written to keep us blind?" That silenced the room. A decision hovered, tangible, fragile. "Prepare the Valkyrie for immediate forward maneuvering." "I'll go alone if I have to," she said. Ress flinched. Not because of the words, but the weight behind them. Everyone knew she would. Moments later, the ship moved like a silent arrow into the dark. The command screens flickered. Lights dimmed. Systems strained as the Valkyrie crossed into space that had not known touch in 1,000 years. And then they saw it. A structure, neither ship nor station, suspended within a dead cluster of asteroids. It pulsed with soft indigo light, shaped like a spiraled seed or a sleeping star curled inward. Around it, debris drifted in impossible patterns, as if orbiting memory instead of mass. Rose felt her breath catch. It was beautiful, and wrong. Every sensor on the ship failed to classify it. No material match. No energy ID. Just that pulse, echoing through hull and bone. "Commander, power levels are increasing," Sora whispered. It's responding to us. The command deck darkened, then flared white as the structure opened. What unfolded wasn't an attack. It was a transmission. A projection. A woman, or something shaped like one, appeared in the space above the console. Skin of gold-veined marble, eyes like black suns. She spoke, but not in words. The language came like memory, known before understood. You heard us. You are the first. Then everything went black. Rose awoke seconds, or hours, later on the deck. Alarms screamed. Systems failing. But her mind burned with something new, like a voice etched in starlight behind her thoughts. She felt changed. Not altered. Chosen. Emergency jump initiated, Sora's voice cracked. Brace. The ship tore itself from the outer silence with a pulse that shattered 5 reactors and left half the crew unconscious. When they returned to safe space, the broadcast had stopped. The anomaly vanished. The seed, gone. But Rose knew it had been real. She could still hear the pulse beneath her skin. Command responded swiftly. Her orders had been clear: observe only. Her disobedience was immediate and undeniable. Within hours, she was removed from command. Within days, her name was purged from all records. She didn't fight it. There was no point. Something greater had been set in motion. And somewhere in the depths of space, the signal continued, spreading far beyond the range of any sensor, waking things older than empires. They would not remember her as a traitor. They would remember her as the first. You said. The desert moon of Virex, 9 spun slowly beneath a cloudless sky, its cracked surface scorched by 3 suns and forgotten by nearly every map in the central register. Here, among crumbling ruins and salt-stained canyons, Rose Virellian lived nameless and exiled, no longer a commander, no longer anyone of note. Dust had replaced command chairs. Her silence echoed louder than any transmission. She moved through the derelict outpost with practiced stillness, gathering what little power remained in scavenged cells and repairing old sensors with nothing but memory and wire. No one else remained. No central drones. No patrols. Just a few shattered satellites above and whispers in the wind below. But she was not alone. At night, she dreamed, not of the stars she once commanded, but of a golden face suspended in space, of a voice not spoken but imprinted. The entities she had encountered had left something behind, a quiet presence that lingered like a melody caught between thoughts. She could feel it now, behind her eyes, deep in the marrow of her bones. Then, on the 7th night, the signal returned. It wasn't a transmission, not in any conventional sense. Her makeshift receiver picked up only static, yet her mind bloomed with images, spiraled cities floating in oceans of light, warships shaped like wings folded in prayer, planets veined with crystalline roots. A message, ancient and unfinished. You are the first. Rose's breath hitched. She hadn't imagined it. Whatever she'd found, whatever had found her, was trying again. She activated a long-range scrambler, hiding her location, but left one receiver open, a frequency embedded in the seed's pulse. She didn't know why, but something told her it would be heard. 3 days later, someone answered. The ship that descended was crude, patched hull, exposed wiring, half its bulk carbon-scored, but it flew like something guided by desperation and faith. It landed without request or warning. Rose stood ready, hand resting on her sidearm, though instinct told her she wouldn't need it. The ramp hissed open. A tall man stepped out, lean and sun-worn, with a beard that hadn't known a blade in weeks. He carried no weapon, only a glowing module clutched in both hands. I hoped it was you, he said. The galaxy's been whispering. His name was Kale Doran, a former systems scientist from a deep lab project that no longer existed on any ledger. He'd seen the spike in subquantum fields the moment Rose activated the seed. He'd followed that ripple across dead relays, hacked obsolete satellites, and tracked it here. Not to arrest. Not to question. To join. He laid the module on the table inside her shelter. It hummed softly, then flickered open, revealing fragments of a language Rose recognized instantly. The same glyphs she'd seen within the seed. Not merely symbols, concepts, histories, whole civilizations wrapped in geometry and light. It's not just a relic, Kale said, eyes bright. It's a trigger. The seed was part of something called the origin cycle. A civilization that believed every end must be planted with a beginning. Rose ran her fingers along the glyphs. They pulsed faintly at her touch. And they think I'm it? Not think. Chose. You heard the call. That's how the cycle begins. The idea unsettled her, not just for its grandeur, but its intimacy. Chosen. Marked by something she hadn't sought. More came in the weeks that followed. A fugitive AI core, smuggled from a decommissioned command archive, arrived in the broken chassis of a drone. A former historian, blind from data burns, who had memorized fragments of myths scrubbed from the archive. A mechanic who once repaired warships, now helping rewire something far older. They brought pieces, technology that didn't match any modern classification, ideas no one dared say aloud. Together, they began to rebuild what little could be understood of the seed signal. Not a weapon. Not even a beacon. A template. A memory map of a civilization that had folded itself into silence millennia ago, waiting for a mind that could hear. Rose didn't crown herself a leader. But they followed her anyway. Word spread. Quietly at first, then louder, into the undercurrents of the galaxy. Whispers of a woman who had defied Central Command and touched something no one was meant to find. Pirates spoke of her between raids. Colonists repeated her name around dying fires. Some said she'd become something more than human. Others called her a fraud. A ghost. The Central Command called her a threat. They dispatched operatives to intercept any mention of her, blacklisted systems where her influence was rising. But every silenced voice birthed 10 more. Symbols from the seed began appearing on buildings, carved into walls, etched into skin. And all the while, Rose continued to change. It wasn't physical. No extra limbs, no glowing eyes. But she could feel the threads between things, patterns in gravity, synchronicity in dreams, the breath of systems long dead but not forgotten. The entity she'd encountered had not simply spoken to her, it had layered itself into her. She no longer doubted it. She was the beginning. But beginnings never came without endings. And far beyond the fringe systems, Central Command began construction on a new initiative, Project Null, designed to erase not just her, but the entire history she was unraveling. They were not afraid of Rose. They were afraid of what she might awaken. She stood beneath the stars that night, wind coiling around her like prophecy. The others were asleep. Only Kale remained beside her, silent as he watched the horizon. "Do you think I'll lose myself?" she asked softly. "You already have," he replied, not unkindly. "But maybe that's what the galaxy needs." A long pause followed. Then Rose looked skyward. "Then let them remember me wrong," she said. "As long as they remember." "You said." Rose stood at the edge of a forgotten drydock orbiting the broken moon of Luthien's wound, the stars mirrored in the cracked black hulls suspended before her. These were not command vessels, nor were they the clumsy raiders that stalked the outer rim. They were older, designs unknown to any modern archive, covered in glyphs that pulsed when she approached. They had been sleeping in dead systems, hidden in fields of magnetic interference and solar ash. And now, they were waking. Kale hovered nearby, monitoring reactivation cycles on a cobbled-together terminal. His face was drawn tight with disbelief. "They answer only to your voice. Even when I copy the resonance, silence. But you speak and they breathe." Rose didn't answer. Her hand grazed the outer hull of the largest ship, and it responded with a low hum, like a temple exhaling. It was not worship. It was recognition. The others arrived over weeks, outcasts, mystics, renegade captains, even a former command admiral stripped of rank for asking the wrong questions. They came drawn by stories, driven by rebellion or faith, and stayed for something neither could define. No hierarchy formed. Yet all deferred to Rose, partly for what she had done, mostly for what she was becoming. She never claimed leadership. She gave no grand speeches. But when she walked among them, people stood straighter, spoke softer. They looked at her not as a savior, but as a moment, something that marked a turning in the flow of history. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the machine of command ground louder. System by system, it tightened its grip. Dissent was met with sterilization strikes, whispered names scrubbed from all networks. New doctrine declared that memory was a liability. Truth became what command allowed to remain. And still, Rose's signals slipped through, encrypted in ship pulses, etched into music, carried in dreams. The myth of the beginning became a contagion they could not contain. On the shattered world of Vascal, the first skirmish ignited. A planetary blockade had starved the civilian population for weeks. When Rose's fleet, 7 of the ancient ships now reawakened and reforged, descended through the ion storms, the people of Vascal fell to their knees. No shots were fired. Her ships emitted no weapon signature. Yet the command fleet withdrew, inexplicably, each ship succumbing to a cascade of system errors that couldn't be explained, only feared. Command blamed external sabotage. Those who'd seen it knew better. It wasn't technology that turned the tide. It was presence. She had arrived. That was when the High Command authorized the Null Protocol. A weapon not of destruction, but erasure, a memory virus designed to delete not just physical entities but the very idea of them. Thoughts would fade. Names would vanish. Legacy would unspool. Reality would rewrite itself. They launched the protocol from the Red Bastion, deep within command space, targeting Rose, her fleet, her name. The first wave struck near the Vezari cluster. Rose collapsed mid-sentence, eyes wide as her memories folded inward, pieces of herself slipping away like pages torn from a journal. Kale held her as she trembled, muttering fragments, coordinates, names, images of cities no one else had ever seen. But she didn't vanish. Instead, something within her pushed back. The seed, no longer just an echo, awakened fully, embedding its archive across her neural lattice. What command tried to delete, the seed preserved. And more than that, it retaliated. The strike ricocheted backward through the relay, unraveling the null signal into a cascade of harmonic codes that broadcast across command networks. Data previously erased reappeared. History long buried flooded back. Across dozens of worlds, people dreamed of cities they'd never visited, heard songs no longer recorded, remembered names no one had spoken aloud in generations. Rose rose from her collapse changed. Her voice, when it returned, carried a resonance not entirely human. She no longer had to convince anyone. The galaxy itself was remembering. And command, for the first time in its long reign, began to fear. Their next move was not subtle. The citadel of Rho 3, a fortified system housing Central's most loyal worlds, became the battlefield. Command amassed the entire 8th Armada there, a force so vast it blotted stars, surrounding the citadel to use it as bait. They knew Rose would come. And she did. Her ships arrived in silence, 10 now, dark and gleaming, bearing no flags, emitting no threat. Yet when they moved, space itself seemed to shiver. The standoff stretched across hours, then days. No comms. No movement. Then Rose transmitted a single phrase, "This is not a war." But command had already fired. The first salvo never landed. Rose raised her hand aboard the Valkyrie Ascendant, and the seed, now fully interfaced with her consciousness, activated. What happened next would never be fully understood. Time slowed. Light folded. Entire fleets locked in frozen suspension mid-volley, energy beams halted inches from hulls. Command ships shut down, not from attack, but surrender, systems refusing to respond to orders that conflicted with something deeper, older, encoded not in metal but memory. The citadel's gates opened. Its people emerged not as soldiers, but as mourners, carrying effigies of forgotten gods, painted with the sigils of the origin cycle. They hadn't rebelled. They'd remembered. Rose withdrew without firing a shot. The message was clear: force could silence, but only memory could undo. On the edge of deep space, her fleet gathered once more. In the observation chamber, Kale looked at her across a flickering console. "You're no longer the beginning," he said quietly. She turned to him, violet eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "I'm the continuation." And far beyond, in systems yet untouched, the stars began to listen. Ask ChatGPT. The stars above the galactic core shimmered with eerie silence, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. At the heart of this stillness drifted the Valkyrie Ascendant, encircled by ships both ancient and newly born, an armada unlike any ever assembled. The vessels bore no insignias, no allegiance to faction or planet. They were not instruments of war. They were memory, shaped into form, summoned for a purpose only one woman truly understood. Rose Virellian stood on the bridge beneath a canopy of starlight and pulsing neural maps. Her figure was still human, but faint traces of light glowed beneath her skin, like constellations breathing within her veins. The seed, fully awakened now, threaded through her thoughts and blood, no longer separate from her, but one with her, an interface not of control, but of harmony. Across from her, Kale Doran's face was pale, not from fear, but awe. "They're going to activate the core null," he said. "You know that, don't you?" She nodded. "It's their final card." The core null protocol wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was designed as a reset mechanism, an engineered singularity at the center of the galaxy, capable of rewriting the fundamental constants of spacetime. If deployed, entire histories could be unraveled. Not destroyed, but undone. As if they had never occurred. Rose had seen it once in the visions left behind by the seed, an empire that had tried to erase its own mistakes, only to dissolve into myth. "They want to end this before it spreads further," Kale said. "You. Us. Everything." "They don't understand," she replied. "This isn't a rebellion. It's evolution." Outside the viewport, Command's final fleet emerged from fold space, sleek, silver-edged warships flanked by data-shielded carriers and null-class dreadnoughts. At their center loomed the Crown of Origin, the station housing the core null device, suspended within a lattice of gravity wells and black hole stabilizers. The message came not as sound, but as a code flash across every known channel: surrender or be unmade. Rose closed her eyes. Then, without sound, she stepped forward and opened the seed. There was no physical mechanism, no switch to flip. The activation was internal, a synchronization between her and the entity that had chosen her. Her thoughts reached outward, amplified through the seed's resonance, and a wave of remembrance surged through space. Every ship in her fleet lit up, not with power, but with memory. Visions rippled from their hulls like auroras, fragments of forgotten lives, civilizations extinguished by fear, songs sung in languages long dead. Across the stars, those watching fell silent. Even within command, some officers lowered their weapons, unsure whether they were witnessing surrender or revelation. The Crown of Origin prepared to fire. Rose knew there was only one way to stop it, not by force, but by offering the one thing the device could not erase: meaning. She transmitted no threat, no ultimatum. Instead, she sent a single memory: herself, as a girl of 12, lying on the deck of a refugee ship, staring at stars through a cracked window. The memory spread across the relay, fragile, personal, human. Then came others, memories borrowed from the seed, moments stitched from countless lives: a father mourning his daughter on a burning world, a dying soldier choosing not to fire, a child touching an alien tree for the first time. The crown faltered. The null activation began, but its code was no longer pure. It had been contaminated, not by sabotage, but by empathy. Inside the station, systems collapsed beneath the weight of contradiction. The singularity failed to stabilize, folding inward upon itself in harmless collapse. The reset unraveled before it began. Rose exhaled, the strain catching her like a wave. Her vision blurred. Her limbs trembled. She had held the galaxy's grief, and it had nearly broken her. Kale caught her before she fell. "You stopped it," he whispered. "No," she said, voice thin but steady. "We remembered." In the days that followed, command fractured. Some remnants surrendered. Others fled into deep space, clinging to broken dogma. Systems long silenced spoke openly again. Temples were built, not to worship Rose, but to mark the moment when forgetting ended. She never claimed a throne. She issued no decrees. She vanished from the public eye. Some say she became light itself, diffused across the stars, guiding wanderers home. Others believe she simply walked away, tired, content, knowing her task was complete. But on a small moon orbiting a quiet star, a girl with violet-flecked eyes stands beneath a strange constellation. She does not know who Rose Virellian was. But sometimes, in dreams, she hears a voice, calm and fierce, filled with sorrow and fire. Do not fear what they bury. Dig. Remember. Begin. And somewhere in the vastness, the galaxy spins on, not in silence, but in song. You said.